let's get to business. The first speaker today is actually a long-time veteran of phpday. I remember him from one of the best keynotes ever, actually, in phpday 2017, where this lovely guy from Welsh told the story of his career, his growth, his passions. And he's back here today, bringing his experience by meshing together his passion. And in this case, it was live streaming on Twitch and live coding. So please welcome to the stage, Gary Hockin.
Yes. Hello. 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 I mean, what a crowd. This is the easiest audience ever. Like, I change a slide, get a round of applause. Thank you. Yeah, I'm Gary. I work for Twilio, fine purveyors of communication APIs. I say that I work for Twilio. I wear a Twilio jacket, and then I get paid for being here and speaking. So that's that bit out of the way. You should definitely check out Twilio. It's fine. I've spent a lot of time in my job as a developer evangelist, which is a job that nobody really knows what it is. But I end up doing tons of live coding in front of an audience, whether that's like at a conference like this, where I'll give a talk and do some live coding in the talk, or whether that be giving demos to customers or webinars as part of my job, or I do a lot of coding on Twitch, and you can follow me on Twitch at twitch.tv/GHLive, and little known to the conference organizers, this was all just a scam so that I could get more people to follow me on Twitch. So you should totally follow me on Twitch, and that concludes my talk today. Follow me on Twitch. I'll get off the stage when 10 people follow me on Twitch, and we can get on with our day. Yeah? Nobody's following me on Twitch? Disappointing. No, realistically, I learned so much coding in front of other people. It's like this really unusual and different skill set to actually sit down and put yourself out there a bit and code in public. It's really interesting, and I learned a lot of things that I think are useful to you and to me and to everyone in like doing a real job, because I totally don't do a real job. I think that some of the things that I've kind of learned, some of the tactics I use and some of the tools I use are really useful and can be useful to other people too. So I'm going to just run through these in no particular order, the way they came out of my muddled brain. It's fine. You can totally shout out if you disagree with me, or if you're a bit more reserved, put your hand up, and it's fine. We can interact here. This is all good. But realistically, we'll start with the more practical stuff. And I think the biggest problem with the job that I do is that I just do so many of these little tiny projects that I'll do a demo for one customer, or I'll do a demo for our booth, or I'll just write some code just to try and check how this new feature in one of our products works. And I can see everybody frantically reading the names of my projects, ready to judge me, and that's good. You should be doing that. And I think that my project hopping ways like really can be a problem, because I'll just completely forget where anything lives in a project. I'll forget basic stuff like, how do I run the tests in this project? Are there any tests in this project? How do I deploy this? Where does it deploy to? Does it deploy at all? And I completely forget how to do all of these basic tasks because I'm moving around projects so much. And I think the actual secret weapon here is, before I carry on, this talk is all about my own opinions on what tools I like and what tactics I use. People in this room will definitely disagree with my opinions, like 100%. You may want to punch me in the face, and that's normal. Don't punch me in the face, but it is normal to feel like you want to punch me in the face. So big caveat to say, these are my opinions. Your mileage may vary. You may have different opinions. That's fine. We can all get along having different opinions. That's great. But yes, I think like the one thing that I really try and do with new projects that I never did with old projects is just have consistency so that it's predictable for me where things live, where files live. Frameworks can really help us out with this. Like structured frameworks can help us to know exactly where certain files should live, where this configuration should live or that configuration. If I want to change something, I need to go to that file and it lives there. using the same tools now. I try and use a repeatable set of tools rather than using like what's new and hot today, because then I know that I have consistency and predictability. And so when I move projects all the time, it's like, oh, this looks exactly like all my other projects. And so I can totally do that. And I think where I don't have consistency, where I have older projects that use different tools, like a makefile is just the actual silver bullet for this problem. Because now I don't have to remember to do PHP artisan serve to start the project in one website and to do PHP-s, minus T public in another project. I don't have to remember which test runner I'm using and how to invoke that test runner. I can just do, make start, make test, make check, make deploy. They are my kind of 4 basics that I have in nearly every project. And I can see already people are judging my make files now, and that's fine too. You can totally judge if this is really bad make file wizardry. That's fine. But this is like the wrapper that makes me have a layer of consistency, right? And make files are built into nearly every Linux-like system. They're right there in the operating system. I know there are other tools. You can, use Composer, run in your composer.json to do this stuff. But I just tend to use make files because they're there. And I also end up wrapping stuff that's in Composer and in NPM, because you've got like NPM run dev, NPM run watch, or whatever. And just like, okay, make dev, and I know that it's going to do all that stuff for me, so I don't have to remember. I really, really think that make files are like are such a cool tool that, yeah, I hate it when I go to a project and past Gary hasn't written a make file. I'm like, oh, now I have to figure out how to do all this stuff again. So I use a couple of tools now that I think are best in class for me. Not necessarily best in class for you. Pest PHP is my go-to test runner now. Pest, like PHP unit is amazing. It's so good. But I have this inherent laziness, which means I can't be bothered to remember how to do stuff in PHP unit all the time. It's like, how the hell do I run this test with a load of different data providers? I can't remember how to do that. It's like you've got to create a function and then annotate something, and it's like, oh, so much effort. So I think the pest PHP really does solve that problem. This is just a generic test, but I just love the width. That's how you just pass a data set in with pest. And Nuno's going to be giving a talk on pest tomorrow, I believe. So you're really lucky if you want to learn more about pest straight out of the horse's mouth. Then yeah, there's going to be a great talk on that tomorrow. So definitely come and attend that if you want to learn more about pest. I think it's a really, really cool tool. I like the simple things, like being able to create a test from the CLI rather than having to like actually create a file in my IDE, because I am that lazy. It's really good. Slim is my go-to for any project that basically doesn't need a view layer or consistency. I just really think it's so cool, Slim. So Slim's just this really lightweight. Essentially, it's just like a router that just gives you access to a router where you just want to be able to return some JSON. I use it all the time. I absolutely love it. And I would encourage you to try it out if that's the kind of thing that you need. I use Rob's starter kit rather than the actual starter kit. I'll tweet out a link to that after the talk. Follow me on Twitter. I am now a content creator, and you should follow me on all the platforms in all the world. It's fine. Yeah, I love Slim. I think Slim is just great, and this is just me dumping tools. Laravel, has anyone heard of Laravel in the room? Yeah? Oh, come on, you've all heard of Laravel. That was a joke. Come on. Yeah, I think Laravel's great, and it's turned into my go-to for when I need any kind of view layer or persistence. I just really think that Laravel it just gives me that predictability I was talking about. I know how to do everything. Look, your mileage may vary. It's an opinionated framework, and I don't necessarily agree with all of the opinions that the person coming before me has made. But I'd rather have an opinionated framework with opinions I can discard than like not have the consistency. And I just think, who wants to be writing an authentication system in 2022, right? You just do one command, and you've got your login form, and you forgot password, and it's just, I'm a lazy dev. Have I said that before? I don't want to have to write this stuff, and I think Laravel gives you that. It also gives you really good predictability. I can jump into anyone else's Laravel project and know where to find the root definitions. I think that's important too. So yeah, I love using Laravel now. How times have changed. SAM is a static analysis tool, and I did come to like static analysis quite late in the game. But SAM is really, really interesting to me because I do a lot of new projects, so I can crank SAM up to its highest level, and it tells me when I'm writing bad code all the time. In the end, I just get annoyed with it. But it is good for consistency again. It's a really good tool for consistency. The other option, I use SAM, but there's PHP Stan. And I think there's a talk today on PHP Stan. So, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, they're like two sides of the same coin, right? They're very similar tools. So there's a talk if you want to learn more about static analysis today before lunch, I believe. It's on the schedule. It's fine. It's fine. So yeah, SAM is really cool, and again, it's giving me this consistency so that all my projects look the same. That's what I'm looking for when I use SAM. Excuse me. Ngrok's a really interesting tool, particularly useful if you work with things like webhooks, because it allows you to put your development environment onto the internet and be accessible from a URL. So rather than having to deploy your changes so that they're available on the internet for a third-party server to call with a webhook, for example, it just makes your dev environment available at a URL. It's like a proxy. So cool. Yeah, obviously I'm working for a company whose main products are built on webhooks. This is probably more useful for me than other people. But, for example, I'm playing the game Battlesnake. I don't know if anyone's heard of Battlesnake in the room or online. I don't have access to the chat. I feel like as a Twitch streamer, I should be interacting with chat, right? It's really strange. Excuse me. Yeah, so Battlesnake is a game which is like Nokia Snake, if you remember, like Nokia Snake, if people are... You all look so young. I don't think there's many people who would remember that. Chris definitely would remember it. He's old. But it's like Nokia Snake. But what happens is that you need to write a piece of software that plays the game of Snake. So every 500 milliseconds, it sends you a HTTP request to your server with a big batch of JSON. We'll see a bit more about it later. And then you need to reply whether the snake's going to go up, down, left, or right. And it has to reply every 500 milliseconds, and there's like a series of challenges that you can do. Survive for 50 turns without hitting the walls, or don't hit the other snakes. But then there's like these battle snake mode where you fight against other people's programs to see who's got the best software. Inevitably, I'm terrible at it, but I really, really enjoy the challenge. It's really good fun. And this is where something like Ngrok comes in, because it has a web interface that allows you to inspect the HTTP request, so you can see the JSON that's coming in. And it allows you to inspect your response, so you can see what you responded. But more interestingly for me, it allows you to replay a request, which is like the really good feature of Ngrok. So for example, when I'm testing a piece of software that in Twilio, we send a message to a mobile phone number, and then Twilio turns that into an HTTP request, and then that hits your server, and you respond with what you want to do. And I just sneaked in an explanation of what Twilio does, and nobody notices, because that's how good I am at my marketing job. But yeah, I don't want to have to keep sending messages to this number to test if my software is working correctly, right? So I can replay the requests from right within a browser interface, and that's just so much easier. Ngrok is amazing. If you're doing any kind of work that way, if you just want to show a colleague your dev, a web page that you've written on, that's on your dev machine without having to put it anywhere, you can share the URL with them. If you want to check how your website looks on mobile, it's brilliant for that kind of stuff. It's a really, really good tool. There is an open source version written in PHP, if anyone knows the name of that tool. Expose, thank you. So Ngrok is free. Is freemium, so there's a free layer, and then there's a premium layer if you want to have a custom URL. Otherwise, it'll just generate a new URL every time you spin it up. So I think it's just, I just use it because I have a license. But yeah, Expose is a free open source version, I believe, written in PHP. So check that out as well. I don't know if the features are parity, but if that's the kind of thing that interests you more, then take a look at that. Bref is brilliant. So Bref is a PHP layer for AWS Lambda. AWS Lambda is AWS's functions as a service offering, so this new serverless model. There is actually a server. That confused me for ages. It does actually run on a server. You just don't have to manage it. It's not like serverless. But Bref is great for me to be able to just throw projects up onto the internet where I don't have to really care about how it's being hosted. It's really good for, I find Bref really good for projects, particularly where I don't have any persistency. So I don't have to worry about a database or anything, because if you want to run a database-backed project on AWS Lambda, it can be a bit tedious because you have to get your database onto AWS's database and then set up like this virtual network so that the database can talk to the Lambda, and it's like, oh, tedious. But if there's just some throwaway code that you want to throw up there, you have 1 million free invocations of Lambda a month. It's probably the best kept free hosting secret, and Bref makes hosting on Lambda trivial. It's even got a so if you're working with Laravel and you want to throw Laravel onto Lambda, I believe Laravel have a proprietary offering called, it's not Forge, it's something else. Vapor, right? So that's a paid product that allows you to do that. Bref just does it, and it's free, and it's open source, and it works beautifully. So I tend to just throw my projects onto Lambda. Don't have to worry about servers. Bref keep the compatibility layer up. They have new versions out when new versions of PHP come out, so you can be running on the newest, latest, greatest versions. It's great. I love it. So yeah, if you haven't, this is really tedious. Does anyone notice that I've got a premium Canva account, so I get access to loads of like stock photos. So I'm like, oh, I'm going to go ham with them because I'm paying for them. It's great. If you wanted to punch me in the face yet, there's the tedious link. If you haven't wanted to punch me in the face yet, you probably will with these opinions, because these are now less tool-based and more my own way of working based. So we'll see how that goes. So yeah, when I'm live coding now, and even when I'm not live coding, I've gone to this model of wanting to be clear rather than wanting to be like really succinct. So I'm going for clarity over brevity. I don't necessarily want to write the shortest number of lines of code anymore, because one, it makes it so much harder to remember what you were doing and why you were doing it when you go back to a project. It's like, oh, what the hell does this two lines with all question marks and colons and double question marks, and I'm like, oh, I have no idea what that does anymore. So if I can't understand it, then my audience will obviously, not going to understand it either. And so I'm really going for clarity now. I'm optimizing for people reading the code, because computers are really fast, and so it's not really going to make a big difference if you use 10 lines of code to the computer. It's still going to run the same speed as if you used 1 line of code. But as people, we really need to try and optimize for readability for people, I think. People are going to hate this opinion, and that's fine. You can. People really like to write these really cool 1-line, oh, I condensed 8 lines of code into 1 line. I am the super programmer. But for me, I'd rather have the 8 lines of code. And this is the kind of thing, it's a terrible example. Like, this is not a great example, but it's returning early, right? So now I'm going to say I need to be passed in a whole even number. So instead, I could do all this on 1 line, right, with ors and ands and brackets and all that good stuff. But I'm like, no, I'm going to return early. I'm going to say if it's less than 0, return false, because I know then that it's a whole number. And if it mods with 2, it's not equal to 0, I'm going to return false. Now I know that it's an even number. So we got this far, it's an even number. And then the string should be non-empty, so I'm going to return false. And I completely know that we could do this in 1 line, but I'm going to go for the 8 lines of code every time now. It makes life so much easier when you come back to it in 6 months, and you're like, who the hell wrote this? I have no idea what this is doing. Oh, git blame says it was me. So yeah, this is definitely something I'm optimizing for now. Value objects. Oh, I'm in love with value objects. I absolutely love value objects. I mean, past me, who wrote value objects, makes current me really, really happy. I love it. So value objects are typically immutable PHP objects that just hold some values, essentially. And the reason that I absolutely love value objects is it takes the guesswork and the remembering out of these nested arrays that we typically pass around everywhere. And it's like, oh, what was the name of that key again? I vaguely remember there was a key somewhere in this array that held the information I wanted. But I can't remember that, 2 weeks later. probably the next day I'm like, oh, what was the name of that array again? So value objects take all the guesswork out of that, and I love it. And in all honesty, if you're bored now and you're like, when's he going to stop banging on? Then if you're going to take one thing away from this talk, I would say take value objects. They're amazing. So yeah, this is the JSON data that gets posted to you when you have a turn in Battlesnake. This is what you need to parse and then respond to. And of course, because we're working in PHP, this mega super simple, right, for us to work with that. I know that I'm reading this in from a file, whatever, and normally that would get posted. But we can just JSON decode this into an associative array and access it, right? And it's great. It's fine. It works. But how many times do we say, like, undefined array key when we're working with arrays in this way, right? Oh, and then you're like, oh, what was that called again? Was it settings? Was it setting? Was it config? I can't remember. What was this called? And so what we can do is we can fix that problem with value objects. And this is just a really simple example where here we have a value object that defines the board, and it's got some integers, the height and the width, and then an array of snake, an array of food objects, an array of hazards. And you can see we can annotate this so Sam understands it, because obviously we're still working with Sam here. And then we can just create an immutable. I'm using public read-only properties for this because, why bother with getters and setters? They're value objects, right? I'm just literally using them to store some data. And we can see we can have like a game object and a board object and a snake object attached to this. So it's a nested set of objects instead. So instead of us accessing arrays, we now need to turn our JSON into these value objects. And this library is fantastic for doing that. I think Marco showed me this library, Valinor. Fantastic for doing it. It'll take the JSON object and using strict type comparisons will turn it into the objects we want. So we can just create a factory, it's as simple as that, to turn the JSON string that comes in into the move class that I just showed you. And we're going to get if there's any weirdness, if fields don't exist in the data, if the data in the JSON is bad, we'll get an exception, so we can catch and handle that. Fantastic way of doing it, I think. And then we get this, right? This is what Lazy Gary wants all along, is my ID telling me exactly what I've got access to and how I access it. That's what I'm looking for, so that when I go back, I don't have to guess array keys. I've got my ID telling me exactly what data is where. Oh, this is so good. When I come back to a project and I haven't done this, I'm like, oh, why didn't I do this at the time? It's like the first thing I do now, to be honest, in an existing project. So yeah, strict typing is definitely your friend as well. Like, I know these opinions are going to be contentious. Strict typing is definitely your friend in this case. Like, 75% of bugs are caused by type conversions in PHP. Fact, I didn't just make that number up off the top of my head. Or anything you can do to stop unwanted type conversions is great. I think James is talking about these kind of code quality things. Is this? Yeah? Okay. I'm just trying to promote everyone else's talks like the good man that I am. It's fine. But yeah, code quality is important, and type conversions caused so many bugs in my code base over the years. It's first thing I always check when I find a bug is it's got to be type conversions. I'm converting a false into an integer somewhere by accident because I didn't really think about it at the time. And strict typing really helps you with that. So there's just a few. I'm doing good here. We're looking good. We're going to get through this. There's just a few live coding specific things that I wanted to talk about. This is more specific to when I'm coding with an audience or on Twitch. So yeah, I think the one thing that I really love about coding in public is the concept of having to explain what you're thinking, what you're doing, why you're doing it, how you understand the problem while you're actually trying to code, which is actually quite difficult, but really rewarding because you're constantly explaining the problem in the way that an audience can understand. You're actually solidifying the problem in a weird way in your head while you're trying to explain what you're doing. If you've ever used the rubber ducking technique where you try and frame the problem as a question to ask someone else or to ask an inanimate object, then when you're actually live coding, you're constantly doing that. And I think that's kind of the thing that pair programming or mob programming can give you too in a work environment, is the process of actually trying to explain how you see the problem, why are you doing this? I'm doing this because I think this is the problem and I can solve it by using this technique, is really, really helpful to me, weirdly. Once you get over the point of trying to type and talk, like there's definitely a practice mechanic there, it's really, really helpful. And so I think this is why pair programming is so valuable. As a person who doesn't do any sort of professional programming in anger anymore, when I go back to being a developer, which I inevitably will, I think pair programming sessions will definitely be something I'll want to do a lot of because of this, because it's continuous rubber ducking and it helps you to frame the problem in a way that makes it easier to solve. Yeah, the other thing that I've learned is like keeping your credentials secure when you have an audience is really difficult. I'd love to come up with you saying, oh, and here's a tool that you can use to solve the problem, but I don't have a tool to solve the problem. I've just kind of accepted the fact that I'm going to leak credentials. And the way that I deal with it is I've written a load of command line scripts to cycle credentials for like Twilio and for my database, so that when I leak the credentials, I can just hide my screen and rotate them quickly and update the environment variables that I'm using. And you just have to live with it, right? You can just like var dump the most innocuous object, and all of a sudden, oh, there's my credentials on the screen, look, because they're stored in this object that I've dumped. So it is what it is. Yeah, I just wanted to put a picture of a pineapple pizza because we're in Italy, and I thought it'd make you all mad. I'll be honest. I don't know, is that going to work? We'll see. It was either that or a carbonara with cream, but I went for the pizza. It's fine. This is really interesting to me, right? This is a really practical piece of advice, actually, is to use a light theme in your IDE. And I know that's going to be really opinionated. People are going to be, oh, you heathen using a light theme, how dare you? But there's actually a really good technical reason for using a light theme if you're coding in public, and if you're coding on Twitch or if you're coding in a room like this. The first one is that on these kind of projectors, the light theme works massively, massively better than a dark theme. It's just fact. It just is much easier on a projected screen to use a light theme. The contrast is better. Typically, you want to go for a light theme with the highest contrast you can get. The other one, which is weird, and I didn't really understand because I don't really understand how videos encode, but light video encodes a hell of a lot better. So if you're sharing your screen on Zoom, on a Zoom call, or on YouTube or on Twitch, it actually encodes a hell of a lot better when you're using a light theme than it does a dark theme. So actually, your stream looks better when you use a light theme. I don't understand why. A friend of mine explained it to me, and I kind of just glazed over after about 10 seconds. I went, yeah, that's fine, I'll believe you. But it is actually true. So yeah, using a light theme is good advice. Getting your audience to do the work. This is one of my favorite reasons for streaming on Twitch, to be honest, is like, I'm just the hands. The people in the chat are doing all the work for me. They're telling me what to type. And in some instances, because I kind of hacked together this plugin for IntelliJ that allows Twitch chat to interact directly with my IDE. So they can actually put the code into my IDE for me. So I literally have to do nothing. I just have to waffle on for 30 seconds to give them time to put the code in my IDE for me. So getting your audience to do the work is great. Inevitably, like, as the streamer, I'm the least intelligent person in the room most of the time. And so getting my audience to do the work for me is a big win. I love it. If I'm doing live coding like here, I'm doing a talk here at this event, I'll try and get the audience to interact, try and get the audience to shout out when they see me inevitably making a typo, get the interaction going. That's kind of what people enjoy about live coding streams anyway, right, is the interaction. They're not there to sit and watch some characters appear in an IDE. That's not fun. So yeah, getting your audience to do the work is cool. I get distracted. That's the biggest problem, I think, is somebody in chat will say, have you seen this library that will solve this problem perfectly? And then I go and look at that library, and then I'm like, oh, it doesn't solve this problem perfectly, but this is a really cool library. Let's just like open another project quickly and check if this library does what it says it does. And then in the docs for that library, it's like, oh, if you want to solve this adjacent problem, have you seen this library? And I'm like, next thing I know, I've got nothing done, but I've learned about 3 libraries I'll never use. So I just get distracted, which is not a problem when you're streaming for entertainment, but when I'm live coding to a customer or when I'm live coding in a conference, that can be a bit of a problem because people have come with an expectation of getting results. So yeah, I get distracted a lot, but that's fine, you know, it is fine. The other way that I tend to code in like 2 to 3 hour time blocks, which isn't a lot of time really. And so my main way of making sure that I don't feel really dissatisfied with a coding session is to ship as early as I can. So I'll do a really, really minor amount of work and call that a release and just deploy. It could be as simple as, you know, one release would be, oh, look, I've written a 10-line script that responds to a /ping route with the date and time. Right, call that a start and deploy that. There's something deployed. We've got something up there. Now I'm going to add a new route that adds a really minor feature. That's going to take me 20 minutes. Deploy, and then just keep deploying over and over, because otherwise I never end up deploying anything, and that can be like really disheartening to just be coding stuff and it just to stay on your machine. It's like you haven't really done anything, right? If you haven't released anything, you haven't really done anything. So shipping early and shipping often is something I definitely do a lot of. And again, using Bref makes deployment so easy. It's just like make deploy, it's up there, carry on coding. So we've come to the piece of the talk where I asked people on Twitter anything that they wanted included in the talk. Some people did want things included. One of the reasons I put this slide up there is it implies that I wrote the talk on April the 11th and not like 20 minutes before I went to bed last night. I didn't write it 20 minutes. Organizers, I didn't. I wrote it like a couple of weeks ago, but I definitely didn't write it on April the 11th. So let's take a look at what people wanted to see, or not, if the internet is broken. I can see them. You can't, apparently. That's okay. Samantha, I eat killer bees, Samantha said, tell the audience hi from me. So, hi, Samantha. Anyone going to wave to Samantha? She may be watching. Hello, hi, Samantha. Hi, thank you. Yep, there we go. The phrase, Pengust, munch, and a picture of a red panda. May I recommend this one? So thank you, Laura. There's a red panda for you. It's all good. Donuts. I want donuts. There we go, Greg. This is hypnotic. I could just watch this for hours. I'm distracted. Okay, it's fine. It's fine. Wizard or Disney memes or GIFs, please, says my colleague Lizzie. Okay, I don't really like wizards or Disney. That's probably the opinion that's going to get me punched in the face, but it's fine. Pies, lots of pies. There we go, Dominic. There's some pies. Sorry, this is just me gratifying myself. Cats, always cats, and cats, never enough cats. There's some cats. You're late. PHP 6, says James. This tweet, says Rick. No problem. Anyway, that's kind of me wrapping up right here. I do think when I'm sitting coding in front of people, like, oh my God, people are going to see how bad a developer I am. I can't even understand this basic problem. And you can clip this stuff and get it all out, and I'm like, oh, I'm such a bad developer. But actually, it turns out I'm okay. I'm an okay developer. Good is a strong word. I'm an okay developer. I can kind of grasp problems. It's kind of solidified the fact that what I'm good at is understanding the problems and not necessarily writing the code in the IDE in the best way. But that's kind of the least important thing, I think. So yeah, it turns out I'm okay at developing, and I'm happy to sit in front of people and to write code. And I would encourage everyone to give it a try, even if it's pair programming back in the office. I definitely would encourage you to give it a try. And so I'm going to stall because I think they need to change the batteries in the hand mic behind the curtain. I will say there, thank you very much for listening to what I have to say. You can follow me on Twitch if I haven't said. Have I said that already? At twitch.tv/GHLive. You can follow me on Twitter at twitter.com/GH. I will get off the stage. That's just a joke. I'm not going to stay on the stage. But yeah, thank you very much. And I guess we have time for questions, if anyone would like to. I mean, there's not really much to ask questions about there. It was just very woolly. But I can take questions. It's fine. Yeah, go ahead. Oh, we...
Hi. Okay, I want some advice for someone that wants to start live coding, how to start and how create this type of connection with other people when you're coding.
Yeah, it's a really good question, how to get started. The piece of software you want to use is OBS Studio. I think it's like what everybody uses for live streaming. The good thing about streaming coding is you can do it from one machine. If you're streaming sort of gaming like you typically see on Twitch, they normally have two machines because the encoding and the uploading is quite strenuous. Really, with live coding, you can just do it from your laptop or your desktop development machine, to be honest. You can just fire up OBS, create a Twitch account or a YouTube account, whichever, or whatever streaming platform you want, and just get going, really. I think there's live coding, there's software development as a category on Twitch now, which means that discoverability is a lot better than it was. You used to have to go under science and technology, and now there's a dedicated software development category, and people will just come and hang out. It can be really disconcerting when you start streaming and you're just literally talking to yourself because there's nobody in the room. But Twitch stats are really laggy, so don't believe that if it says 0, it is actually 0. And just give it a go. And hit me up, let me know when you go on streaming, and I'll come and hang out, and we can figure out how it works from there.
Okay, thanks.
Was there a question?
Hello.
Hi.
I have a very similar question, but not for personal Twitch streaming, but for a company live streaming.
Yeah.
What can we do? In Italy, we are very jealous of our secrets in our company. So what can I do what should I say to my company? Okay, let's start during the day, do live coding.
That's a really good question, yeah. So what we do at Twilio is that we use live coding and live streaming in the same way that we would use other marketing tools like Twitter and Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn. So we use it as an opportunity to connect with our customers. And you don't necessarily have to be, this is really counterintuitive, but you don't necessarily have to be live coding the product that you're selling, right? You could be live coding open source contributions to libraries that you use. But what you're doing is making connections with your customers that you would never have had before. And particularly for me as a developer evangelist, which my job is all about making connections with customers, you'll find that you'll get really good product questions because people will go, oh, you work for this company. How would I do this with your product? Or does your product do this? So you end up getting a really honest feedback loop on what your product is doing. And I think that there's massive value in making those connections and building a community. And you'll never get a better community than on live coding because the feedback is immediate. The chat is there. So you're interacting in real time with your customers rather than it being on Twitter where, there's a delay as you answer the questions and stuff. So I honestly think that there's a lot of value in it for business. And you don't need to be having hundreds of people for it to be a success. I have some of the best streams with like 7 people in the room. Doesn't matter. We're still hanging out and coding. I'm still making connections to my community. There's value in that.
All right, we have a question from people following from home. Eugene asks, you're talking about a limited set of consistent tools preferred to what's hot. But at some point, you also acquire new and hot tools.
Yep.
So, for example, Bref, what's the trick there?
The trick is to try and use consistent tools, but be easily distracted and to find the new tools. It's like someone's inevitably told me about Pest a couple of years ago or 18 months ago or whatever, and I'm like, oh, we should definitely try that out on stream. So I don't necessarily say like, keep your tool set in stone. I just think that I try and not make frivolous changes rather than just like, oh, this is cool, we'll use this for this project. And again, the make file is what allows you to make those changes to your tool set without adding friction, because that's what's giving you the consistency layer. To say, doesn't matter if I stop using Bref and start using Vapor, as long as I update my make deploy, it's still going to deploy, right? I don't have to remember that there's a new command that I have to write to deploy. So yeah, I try and be as consistent as I can now. Again, inevitably, you're going to need to bring new tools into your tool set because you're going to find new problems to solve that you haven't solved before. So yeah. I think recently I've started using like Laravel WebSockets and the pusher stuff, which is really cool. So that's definitely going to be integrated into my tools going forward. Any more questions? Awesome. I'll be here all day today and some of tomorrow, and please come and find me and hang out if you want any questions or just chat about this stuff. I love it. And have a brilliant day, and thank you very much.